guys, so today I am going to be starting on cutting up and removing parts on the left side, the driver's side of the Mustang. So first thing is first, I need to get out the master cylinder and the steering box. One good thing about this car, doesn't necessarily mean it's good, but I did, now before I took it apart, we're jumping around here on this thing right now, I did check the steering. And how you check the steering on a car for play is you jack it up in the center of the car, okay? So jack up your car in the center. Jack it up in the center and grab your wheels. Go to the driver's side and grab the wheel and go back and forth with it, like so. And see if there's anything moving. There should be no movement. And if there is movement, you look underneath the car or have someone actually do it with the wheel for you. So you're actually literally going to be going like, I can't show you here, but you're going to be grabbing the wheel and going side to side with it. And you're going to lay underneath the car and you're going to look and see if you see any movement in the tie rod ends, the pitman arm, any of that. Obviously his had movement. That stuff is worn out. The good news is I didn't see any movement coming from the pitman shaft and any of that in the steering box. So your adjuster on your steering box tells you a lot too. You see this nut right here, this screw, that is where you adjust the steering box. You normally back the nut off and you turn the screw to get rid of any play in your wheel. Now normally on a steering wheel in a car, you want to have it when the wheel is centered, you want to have it so if you're grabbing the wheel and you're going like this, you're not getting any more than a ½ an inch of movement without the wheels are moving. Okay, so the wheels outside, your outside wheels should not be moving, but your steering wheel should have no more than ½ an inch. And your adjustment for that is right there. So it's a good thing is it's showing me that thing's never been turned down. So it should be a pretty good box. Doesn't mean you shouldn't check it out and go through it. I'm just saying that's a good sign right there and you see it up like that. When you see that screw turned all the way down, you know it's no good. The other thing to remember, and this goes for all cars, when you're turning that screw down, don't just crank the bloody thing down and think that's the end of it, because you gotta be careful because it's actually tightening a gear down on the worm gear, and if you over tighten it, you'll wear the worm gear out, which will cause you to get a little bit of a bump like in the steering. So you just want to go a little bit. So what you do is if you were going to tighten that, you'd unloosen that. I would maybe turn that thing a ½ a turn, and then I would rock my steering wheel. There's still tons of play, and give it a little more, and rock the steering wheel, okay? Now the other trick to checking front end, so I can't explain this to you, but I'm showing you. So if you're grabbing the tire side to side, moving it, you make sure there's no movement. And if there is, you see what's worn out. Now how you check ball joints and movement on control arms is you do not jack the car up in the center. What you do is you only jack up one side of the car and you get the wheel around with the tire on. You get it around maybe, I don't know, 2-3 inches off the ground. You grab a big pry bar and then you go underneath the tire and you pry up and down like this. You can see what I'm doing. You pry up and down the tire and you look to see if you got movement in the ball joint or the control arms. That's how you check it properly in the front. I know this stuff. I'm a licensed vehicle inspector, so I know this stuff. It's just hard for me to explain it to you. I'm sure somebody's out there watching and saying, "Oh, Rick, I would do it this way." And you're right. There's different ways of doing it, but I'm explaining to you how you do it. Okay? So there's one way. So anyway, what we're going to do here today is I'm going to start taking the master cylinder off. The master cylinder, he's going to disc brake conversion kit. I talked to him. That's what he wants to do. Why would you? Why would you put all the old drum brakes back on it? I mean, safety, right? So I'm going to pull the master cylinder. I'm going to pull the steering box. I'm not going to care about the lines here. I'm not even going to try and break the lines free. I'm just going to snip them with a pair of side cuts and whatever. I'm not going to throw the master cylinder out yet. I'm not going to throw out the push rod that goes behind it. I'm going to hang on to all that stuff until I get the new items I'm putting in. Okay? Okay, so that's where I'm starting today. I'm going to start on bolting shit there and seeing where we can go. Okay, I'm going to quickly throw this in this video because I know sometimes people, when they're doing things, they get a bit confused and they lose things. Now, I'm not going to be using any of this because I told you we're upgrading the brake system. But for somebody out there, if you can see this, if I'm filming this right, this is a block to tee all your lines off for your stock brakes on a 67 Mustang. So I'm going to kind of show you in case you've got a car that's all apart and you don't know where they go. This might help somebody. So on your block, there's your firewall, that way. Your forward line is coming out and feeding down through and through here. It's going to feed, if you can, anyway, I can't even get in there to film it. Hang on a second here. Let me crawl under the bloody car. Look what I will go through for you people. This will be easier. Let me get in here. Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so there you go. So this line is going to feed your left front brake. Go through your shock tower, feed your left front brake. The forward port is going to go around to the rear of your master cylinder port. The rear port is going to come around to the front of your master cylinder port. Now, on the bottom here, if you can see this, your rear port on the bottom of this is going to come down, feed through here, and go through your transmission tunnel to your rear brakes. And of course your forward port on the bottom is going to come across your firewall and come over and go through here and feed to your right front brake. So hopefully you guys got that. Pretty simple. Just remember that on your two up top, the forward one is feeding the rear of the master, the back one is feeding the forward of the master. And then of course obviously you've got an electronic thing here. Is where you plug this in, a wire should be coming off somewhere. I don't have the wire here, but and that probably tells you if your e-brake is on, obviously. So anyway, so I got the steering column out now. I'm going to be taking the steering box off. I'm going to get underneath. I'm going to get the rod off the master cylinder, get that off, get the lines off, and then I'm going to get this gas pedal linkage out of my way. Okay, so as you can see here, I've got the master cylinder off. Those two bolts are right there. Got the steering column out. Got the steering box off. I checked the grease. These cars take grease in the steering box. I did check it. It was down a bit. I topped it up for the hell of it, and then I grabbed the pitman arm and worked the steering back and forth. And it's hard to tell that way, but you're kind of looking for like a lump in the steering, if that makes any sense. So when you're actually moving the pitman arm back and forth, you want to make sure it moves freely. If you feel it moving and then it feels like it ka-chunk and then goes freely again, you know you got a problem inside of it. So unless you actually take it apart, you'll never know. But like I say, it was already half full of grease. It seemed okay moving it that way. I topped it up while it was on the car because it was easier for me to work it on the car than on the ground when it's off. And it seems to be moving smoothly, so we can just pray for the best. We saw that the adjuster screw was up all the way, so that's a good sign. So that's what we'll go for there, but doesn't necessarily mean you can count on it. But we, you know, this gentleman isn't getting, well, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say he's not getting carried away with this car because there's so much rust. But if there's things he can save off the car, he wants to save them. If there's, you know, if the steering box is fine, why rebuild it? Leave it alone. It's his call. It's not mine. So anyway, so we got that off. Got underneath the dash. Pulled the wiper motor out. Pretty much. Let me see if I can film this under here. Oh, there's my. Pulled the wiper motor out that was up underneath here. As you can see, it is pretty much. Somebody had mentioned, oh, I bet it's all rotten in there. It is not rotten whatsoever. It is solid. It's completely solid. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and clean up all the seams underneath here. I'm going to wire wheel all clean up, put some rust mort paint on there. Then I'm going to come around and I'm going to seam seal it all anyway. I'm going to use a good brushable seam sealer because Mustangs are notorious for leaks, so I want to make sure that all the seams are seam sealed very well. Yeah. Alright, so other than that, that is where we're at. And I'm just going to continue on here. Not much of a learning experience on this thing today, but just showing you what I'm doing. Okay, so back out of here, guys. I'm going to try and film it, but it's kind of difficult. So this is your cowl, obviously, on top. And normally underneath the cowl, it's all rotten. There's another panel underneath there. And you can see, you know, they kind of join on together here. This is your outer part, and the inner part's inside. Surprisingly enough, it was rust-free underneath there. So what I did was I got underneath there today, like I told you, besides taking everything apart that I was doing. I got underneath there and I cleaned it all up with a wire wheel, put my black rust treatment paint on, it dried, and then I put my seam sealer on, brushable seam sealer, and then I put my texture spray up underneath there. And it's going to be hard to film, but you can see it's all nicely texture sprayed. That's all up underneath. All the way up under there. You can just see through the openings. Our north is all of it's done. And of course way up underneath in the back up in there is where I seam seal all brushable. Much like right here, like you see the brushable seam sealer here. I did it all up in there. Took care of all of it. I just did it just to make sure it was good and solid. Like I say, there's no rust. You can see there's no rust in these panels. Look at it. Even up inside here where your vents go. Ran my hand up in there, got up in there for light, no rust whatsoever. Surprisingly, as rotten as this car was, that was rust free. But like I say, in behind, back in there, that's where the two panels overlap on the outside where I was showing you. I wanted to seam seal it all. Now, it didn't have any factory seam sealer on the underside when I got under there. It has it on the outside, but I did it on the inside too. Just want to double check because they are notorious for leaking water, and it doesn't hurt. It can't hurt to put it on. A little extra sometimes does not hurt to do. It's like a weld. It doesn't hurt to have a little extra weld on something, you know, if you want to do it. All it's going to do is make it stronger, make it last a little longer. So that's what we did there today. Besides gutting the car and stuff like that. Get out of here. And those doors just closed, beautiful. Look at them lines. Anyway, so the plan is tomorrow is I am going to start, I'm going to move this car over. I'm going to move it over, and I'm going to start cutting all this away in here. Because like I said at the beginning here, I'm still waiting on this part. I'll leave this suspension in here. I've ordered all the parts and pieces up I need, new, for suspension and steering. I talked to the owner. He said go ahead and do it, because that's not something him and I discussed that I was doing when the build was going on. But to replace these inner fenders, you got to take all this apart. So while it's apart, I may as well put new stuff in there. I may as well just replace it. I mean, it's all worn out anyway. It's all garbage. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to replace all that. So I'm going to leave this side together, because those parts for the other side might come before he gets his panel, which means I can throw the other side together. Then the car's a roller again at least. You know what I'm saying? I need to have lots of room around the shop. We're always moving stuff around, so I can't just get carried away and start ripping it all apart like I would love to, because we're always moving stuff around here at OTG. But this car, you know, once this panel's done, that inside panel, and get that figured out there, your torque box, the rust is done. There's a couple bubbles on the trunk and one on one door, but honestly, the fenders for this car are rust free. The doors, besides one bubble the size of a quarter on each corner, are rust free, inside note. The trunk lid's got a couple little wee bubbles on the outside, but nothing happening on the inside. I looked it over. So we might be good. I mean, there's still going to be a little bit of rust there, but the body itself is done. We did it. We got her done. We saved another from the scrapper. Some of you might ask why. Would have been cheaper to go buy another car done already. You are right. It's always cheaper. I'm going to say this over and over again to anyone, because I'm honest. I'm not the TV show out there. It's always cheaper to go buy a car someone's restored, because you never get your money back unless it's a certain car, or you really look after it, and you hang on to it for a long time, because old cars just keep going up in value. But honestly, on the majority of jobs, I'll give you a prime example. If a customer, say, was to spend $50,000 on a job, okay, even if they roll it out the door that same day, they're probably going to sell it between 30 and 35. They're going to get their money back for all the parts, but they're going to lose the money they pay me in labor. Now that's just a number I'm throwing out. That's not the number of this car. I'm just making up a number out of anywhere, okay? So if you spent 50 grand, normally you're going to sell it the same day when you roll it out of OTG for 30 to 35. If you're looking to make money at this, the only way you're making money doing this is if you can do it all yourself. That's the only way. You're paying someone, you do it because you love the car, you love the fact you're building it. And some people just love to take a rusty old car. They could have bought another one cheaper, but they love to do it this way because they can show their friends, here's the videos of my car when this guy was building it. Look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this. And people see it was done right, or at least I'm saying I did it right. They can see it was done right. They have fun watching it. And it's like, I built a car once, well, they didn't, but I'd had a car once done from the bottom up, and here's the proof. And it's got a story to it. Now the car has a story. Now it's going to mean something to the children, to the grandchildren, to whoever. I don't know. That's how stories become something, right? That's how cars become something. If we all just said, let's throw away every rusty car out there and start with a car with no rust, well, good luck. Good luck with that, because they're running slimmer and slimmer every day. This is what we're getting down to. You gotta fix the rusty ones. And if you're looking for a good shop to fix rusty cars, I'm your man. Okay. Hey, it's always a good time at Old Time. We'll see you next time.